Jolien Collier is the founder and president of Counting Coral, a nonprofit focused on saving and protecting coral reefs through living underwater art. So I talk a lot on my show about how climate change affects migration.
100%. You got to understand that most immigration laws are just going to go out the window at this point in time in the next 30 years, because you're not going to be able to stop an entire nation of people having to move because they cannot survive because the oceans have risen and there's no land for them to stay on. They are moving in the Maldives already. Those islands are going underwater. You know, Yemen's a great example. You know, the war in Yemen is pretty much being fought over water. And guess what? Everyone's bailing because water is not worth fighting over, so they're leaving. Guess what? That puts pressure on other communities and countries to say, oh man, we've got all these immigrants. You're going to have to wake up real quick to the environmental issues at hand. Otherwise, you know, all these countries can talk and talk and talk about immigration as much as they want, but they are going to face the biggest crisis ever handed to them on a plate, and it's coming real soon.
It all interacts with the oceans, with how people live and where they live.
Those oceans rise. We have every coastal community around the world being affected, and Miami, you know, is being affected. You know, their city is flooding, and they're putting in millions and millions of dollars to have pumps put in. That's not going to stop. You're just putting a Band-Aid on a very large cut. It's like this complete like madness of thinking as opposed to addressing the issue, which is we're overproducing animals, we're cutting down every freaking forest in the planet, and we're pumping CO2 and carbon into the atmosphere. Those are the issues. Don't try and fix the down chain. Fix the top part, the top drivers that are doing it. Then you don't have to worry about the down chain because they're going to take care of themselves.
Ilya Solman is a professor of law at George Mason University, an author and a blogger for The Volokh Conspiracy on the Reason Magazine website, with his interests including democracy, immigration federalism, and property rights. He joins me today to discuss his newest book, Free to Move, Foot Voting, Migration, and Political Freedom. Reducing the zoning would actually make for less partisanship one against the other. It would actually, you think, solve some of our discontent that we have between groups.
It can reduce it. And moreover, people who live in more diverse areas over time, I think they can become accepting of different groups. There is evidence, for instance, that people who live in areas with more immigrants are more accepting of immigration.
I see that in my own practice where people who are more favorable to immigrants are living in big cities.
One of the dominant findings that we get from survey data on attitude towards immigration in both the United States and Europe, the strongest opposition on average comes from people who live in areas with relatively few immigrants.
So how did your views on immigration change over time?
I've always been generally pro-immigration. What changed over time was my estimate of the importance of the issue. I'm a libertarian, so originally I thought immigration restrictions are just one of many problematic infringements on people's freedom that the government undertake. But the more I look at immigration, the more I recognize that it's not just another excessive regulation or another problematic government program. It's one of the great issues of our time, is it literally blocks many millions of people throughout the world from freedom and opportunity. And many of them are, as a result, through no fault of their own, confined to a life of poverty and oppression, or in some cases, even death. And that makes it different from most, if not all, other forms of problematic government intervention, both the enormous size of the effect and the fact that it's based on essentially circumstances of birth. If you're confined by immigration restrictions, in most cases, it's because you made the mistake of choosing the wrong parents, or you made the mistake of being born in the wrong place, or some combination of both. So in that respect, it's similar to things we now widely recognize as injustices in the domestic sphere, like racial segregation. If you're born Black, you can't live in a certain place, or like the feudal system. The system of immigration restrictions is much like international segregation or international hereditary or aristocratic privilege.
And Jacom Gatwich is a model of South Sudanese descent who is known to our hundreds of thousands of fans as the Queen of Dark. With her deeply pigmented skin and her strong sense of self, and Jacom has turned adversity she has faced in her life into a powerful global message. Can you describe to me what it was like being in a refugee camp?
I came to America and I'm just like, you have a gun. Like, you take a lot for granted. And without even knowing, because like you never know the struggle of going to bed, not having food to eat.
Were you excited to come to America?
I came to America and I told Mom I want to be a model, but it didn't start it because I just didn't feel beautiful. And I'm like, models are supposed to be beautiful. I would watch American Next Top Model and I barely see anybody that looked like me. And I was like, maybe people that look like me are not meant to be models. Until high school, 10th grade, 11th grade, started working on my self-confidence and just started reminding myself, this is something you were so passionate about before you came to America. Why you let an opinion of others stop you? Because I love taking pictures. You know, I love being in front of the camera. I feel like I have a message that I want to say. And for me to say that message is through pictures. And I feel like I could relate that, you know, so then I just started doing modeling on the side as for fun. I would take pictures with local photographer. I'm like, and then we would do a photo shoot and then I'll put it up on my Instagram and write a caption about my experience.
So how'd you take off?
My photo went viral.
Abdi Iftin is from Somalia. He was only 6 years old when civil war broke out in his country in 1991. When the radical Islamist group Al-Shabaab rose to power in 2006 in Somalia, it became dangerous to celebrate Western culture. But because Abdi had taught himself English, he secretly filed stories for NPR under penalty of death. He stayed in Somalia until he had no choice but to flee to Kenya in 2011. In 2015, he won the visa lottery and immigrated to America. Abdi is currently a student at Boston College, majoring in political science. He is also the author of the memoir, Call Me American, published in June 2018. Abdi just became a citizen on January 17th, 2020. Is there a connection between the drought, which also happened in Somalia around the time of the Civil War?
The drought came quickly and very fast. Right after the war, we're talking about over 8 million children starving. I was in this number. I was in this statistics. I think that somehow the drought is connected to the environment, to the bloodshed, the gunshots, the loss of community. One of the reasons why someone wants to join an army in Somalia with the promise of $50 a month, or, you know, generations moving out, crossing the dangerous journeys across the desert or the oceans to get into Europe or other places.
What would you say to somebody who says, well, you know, Ilya's saying just open up the borders, you know, half the world would end up in the United States of America, causing the United States to become a failed country because we couldn't be able to handle all the population?
I have several levels of response to this. One is that immigration doesn't actually move as quickly as that. However, to the extent that we do get more people over time as a result, those people become much more productive than they were previously. They contribute to the American economy. The data show immigrants are on average more innovative than natives, more likely to establish businesses, and they contribute in a wide range of ways. So immigration is not a zero-sum game, just as it's been a very good thing for the city of Miami, that they have a large Cuban immigrant population that has accrued over time. And that's been a big boost to Miami's economy, culture, and society in many different ways.
Thanks for watching. For more Bradshaw Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.